Hey there, ready to unearth some surprising truths about what makes companies truly great?
We're diving deep into Built to Last by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras.
Mm-hmm.
But not just to summarize the book,
Right.
we're on a mission to uncover those hidden gems,
Yeah.
those myth-busting insights that can completely change the way we think about building something that lasts.
And you're in the right place for that. We're going beyond the surface level to uncover what Collins and Porras discovered after analyzing decades of data from some of the most successful companies in history.
The first myth that jumped out at me, and trust me, this one's a doozy, is the idea that all these legendary companies were born from a completely original, groundbreaking idea. You know, the kind of aha moment that changes everything.
That's a compelling narrative, isn't it?
It is.
But the reality is far more nuanced. Collins and Porras found that while a good idea is important, it's not the defining factor in a company's long-term success.
Okay.
In fact, some of the most enduring companies didn't start with a revolutionary product or service at all.
Okay, now you have to give me an example. I'm having trouble picturing a company like Walmart, for example, starting with anything other than discount retail.
And that's precisely the kind of assumption Built to Last challenges.
Okay.
Believe it or not, Sam Walton, the man behind the Walmart empire, didn't initially set out to create the retail giant we know today.
Really?
His first venture was a chain of variety stores, a far cry from the discount haven that is Walmart.
Wow.
It was through years of experimentation, adaptation, and frankly learning from what didn't work that the Walmart concept as we know it emerged.
Wow. That's a side of Sam Walton I'd never considered. But if the initial idea wasn't the magic bullet, what set Walmart apart from its competitors?
The book draws a fascinating comparison between Walmart and one of its rivals, Ames stores.
Okay.
Now, Ames actually started with that rural discount retail model that we might assume Walmart was built on.
Right.
They had the great idea, so to speak.
But they're not exactly a household name today, so what went wrong?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
They ultimately faded out while Walmart flourished.
Right.
And the key difference, execution. Building a robust internal culture that could support their growth. A relentless focus on adapting and evolving to meet changing market demands. These factors, Collins and Porras argue, matter far more than the initial spark of an idea.
It's like that saying, ideas are cheap, execution is everything.
Precisely. And this pattern repeats itself across the companies studied in Built to Last. Boeing's first airplane was a complete flop, forcing them to pivot to furniture making to stay afloat.
Wow.
HP's claim to fame wasn't their initial product lineup.
Right.
And Sony's success story extends far beyond the iconic Walkman. The takeaway here is that it's not about hitting a home run on the first try, but rather about building a company with the resilience and adaptability to evolve and thrive over time.
So instead of betting everything on that $1 million idea, maybe we should be asking, how can we build something that's adaptable? Something that can weather the storms and come out stronger on the other side. It's less about the what and more about the how.
Exactly. And that brings us to a really intriguing analogy the book uses: clock building versus time telling. Think of the founding fathers of the United States. They weren't fixated on who the first president would be. They were more concerned with building a system, a clock of governance, that would endure long after they were gone.
Okay, I'm really intrigued by this clock building metaphor.
It feels like we're talking about creating something that's bigger than any one person or any single product.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Clock building is about creating a company that's built to outlast its founders, its products, even its initial markets.
Wow.
It's about focusing on the underlying system and processes that drive enduring success. Like the founding fathers creating the Constitution, visionary companies are more interested in building a clock that keeps ticking generation after generation,
Right.
rather than just telling time with whatever happens to be working in the moment.
So how do these companies actually go about building their clock? What are the key components?
Collins and Porras identified two crucial elements.
Okay.
The first is a strong core ideology.
Okay.
These are the fundamental beliefs and values that guide the company's decisions and actions. It's not just about having a mission statement. It's about having a set of deeply ingrained principles that permeate every level of the organization.
So it's less about what they do and more about why they do it. Very guiding
Totally.
principles, right?
Exactly. And it's about those principles being so deeply embedded in the company's DNA that they guide everything from major strategic decisions to everyday interactions.
The second element then must be the how the actual mechanisms these companies use to put those principles into action.
You got it. They call it mechanisms for continuous progress. Think of it as the gears that keep the clock ticking.
Okay.
It's about constantly striving to improve, innovate, and adapt while staying true to that core ideology.
This makes me think about another big idea from the book, The Genius of the A&D.
It seems like you can't build a clock that lasts without embracing seeming contradictions. Like, how do you stay true to your core values while also adapting to a constantly changing world?
That's such a great point. The genius of the A&D is about rejecting the either-or mindset that traps so many companies.
Right.
Visionary companies don't see these concepts as mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
They figure out how to be both disciplined and air-adaptable, how to be boldly ambitious and ruthlessly self-critical.
It's like they're finding a way to be both the tortoise and the hare, winning the race by being strategic and consistent, but also ready to shift gears when needed. Can you give me a concrete example of this in action?
Absolutely. Think about a company like Merck, a pharmaceutical giant. Their core ideology revolves around using science to alleviate suffering and improve human health.
Right. Yeah.
But they also have to operate within the realities of a market economy.
It's that balance between purpose and profit that so many companies struggle with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Merck is a perfect example of the genius of the A&D at work.
Okay.
The book highlights their decision to provide a drug for river blindness free of charge in developing countries, even though there was no real financial incentive to do so. They could have easily said, we're a business, we can't afford to just give away our products.
Right, but that wouldn't have been true to their core value of alleviating suffering, even if it came at a cost.
Precisely. And it's important to note that this commitment wasn't some PR stunt.
Right.
It was a reflection of a deep-seated belief that guided their decision-making.
This really drives home the point that a company's values aren't just words on a wall.
Right.
They have to be lived out in the decisions they make, especially the tough ones.
Exactly. And the beauty of this approach is that it creates a sense of authenticity that resonates not just with customers, but with employees as well.
Sure.
People want to be part of something that has meaning, something that stands for more than just making money.
So we've got this clock that's built on a strong core ideology and powered by these mechanisms for continuous progress. But there's still this element of change and adaptation that we haven't fully explored. It seems like there's a tension there. How do these companies evolve without losing sight of who they are?
That's where the concept of purposeful evolution comes into play. It sounds complex, but it's actually a very organic process.
Okay, I have to admit, purposeful evolution does sound a bit like a science fiction concept.
Break it down for me.
Imagine a tree growing.
Okay.
It starts with a solid trunk. That's the core ideology. As it grows, it branches out in different directions. That's the experimentation and innovation.
Right.
But not every branch will bear fruit.
So some branches flourish while others need to be pruned back. It makes a lot of sense as a metaphor for how companies try new things, some of which work out better than others.
That's the purposeful part of the evolution. Visionary companies are constantly experimenting, but they're also incredibly disciplined about evaluating those experiments against their core ideology. If something isn't aligning with their values or isn't proving successful over time, they aren't afraid to let it go, even if it seems like a tough call in the moment.
Can you give me an example of this pruning process in action? It's one thing to talk about letting go of unsuccessful ventures, but in the real world, that's often easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely. One of the most compelling examples in the book is actually a counterintuitive one, 3M and the invention of Post-it notes. Now, you might think a product as ubiquitous as the Post-it note was the result of some grand plan, but it was actually born from a series of what many would consider failures. It all started with the scientists at 3M accidentally creating an adhesive that wasn't very sticky.
A not-so-sticky adhesive doesn't exactly scream million-dollar idea.
Exactly. And for years, no one at 3M could figure out what to do with it. It wasn't until another 3M employee, a choir singer, was looking for a way to keep his bookmark from falling out of his hymnal that the potential of this failed adhesive became clear.
So from a failed adhesive to an iconic office supply found in nearly every desk drawer worldwide, that's amazing.
And it perfectly illustrates 3M's approach to purposeful evolution. They've actually cultivated a culture that embraces experimentation and even celebrates failures as opportunities for learning. 3M has something called experimental doodling time, where they encourage engineers to just play around with new ideas, and they have a program called Genesis Grants, specifically designed to fund unconventional, potentially groundbreaking projects.
That kind of approach feels surprisingly relevant to anyone, really not just massive companies. It's about being willing to try new things, to step outside of our comfort zones, and to view setbacks not as defeats, but as valuable learning experiences.
Exactly. And it also challenges that age-old business advice of sticking to your knitting.
Which basically means sticking to what you know right. Don't try to be something you're not.
In a nutshell, yes. But Built to Last offers a more nuanced perspective. The companies they studied were certainly masters of their core domains, but they didn't allow themselves to be limited by their initial products or markets. They were constantly looking for ways to evolve and grow while staying true to their core values.
Didn't you say that 3M actually started out in the mining industry? That's a far cry from office supplies.
It is. They initially specialized in mining and sandpaper, of all things. But through this process of purposeful evolution, they strategically branched out into a vast array of markets and industries, always with an eye towards applying their core competencies in new and innovative ways. American Express is another great example. They started as a freight delivery service, but evolved into a global financial and travel services company.
It's amazing to see how these companies use their core values as a compass to guide their growth, even when it took them in completely unexpected directions.
And that's a really important point. It's not about blindly chasing trends or diversifying for the sake of diversification. It's about having a deep understanding of who you are at your core and then using that as a filter to determine which opportunities are the right fit for your continued growth and evolution.
This deep dive has really challenged my assumptions about what makes companies succeed over the long haul. It's not just about having a great product or a charismatic leader. It's about building a company that's more like a well-oiled machine, a machine that can adapt, evolve, and continue ticking for generations to come.
And the most compelling aspect of Built to Last is that its insights aren't limited to the corporate world. These principles of building a strong foundation, embracing paradoxes, and pursuing purposeful evolution can be applied to any organization, any team, even to our own personal journeys.
That's a really empowering thought. It means that regardless of our individual goals or aspirations, we can all learn from the timeless wisdom of these visionary companies.
Absolutely. And as we navigate a world where the nature of work is constantly evolving with remote teams and flatter organizational structures becoming the norm, building a strong, values-driven culture is more important than ever. That's a key takeaway from Built to Last that's more relevant now than ever.
This has been a truly fascinating exploration of what makes companies truly great. I'd encourage anyone listening to dive into Built to Last themselves and discover the wealth of insights it holds.
What we're at it.
Until next time, keep seeking out those hidden truths, keep asking those tough questions, and most importantly, keep diving deep.